RedHat News, where the truth speaks aloud. Welcome to RedHat News, where the truth speaks loud. We're coming to you from Southern California, Orange County, a Trump oasis in a sea of blue swamp stew. Orange County, with its strong Republican presence, stands firm in its support for President Trump, even after the aftermath of his trial, despite facing 34 charges, each carrying a potential 4-year prison sentence. Experts believe such severe punishment is unlikely, but the real question is, how will this impact the upcoming election? Orange County is adopting an all-hands-on-deck attitude. Here at RedHat News, we're hitting the streets to talk to people about the issues that matter most. We're excited to announce our live broadcast from the Trump Tent. The Trump Tent is our lemonade stand for Trump, where we'll have merchandise like t-shirts, hats, flags, and more. We'll also be hosting MAGA Car Washes, the car wash with a MAGA twist and a bit of bikini flair. After all, it's Southern California, and the beach is just 10 minutes away in any direction. We want you to join us. We've put a poll in the communities section. Should we go live at the Trump Tent, the Trump Wash, or both? Your voice matters. Let's take a closer look at the facts. Of the 34 charges against Trump, 1 carries a potential 4-year prison sentence. But experts believe such severe punishment is unlikely. The real question remains, how will this impact the election? This November, the eyes of the nation are on the election. Will Trump's conviction sway undecided voters? Supporters of former President Trump quickly rallied in Florida, asserting that Trump did nothing wrong. Critics remain steadfast in their opposition. Political analysts agree that swing voters will be crucial. This election could be decided by a small percentage of the electorate, making every vote count. Marco Rubio calls the verdict a travesty, while the state GOP denounces it as a witch hunt. As the race tightens, will Democrats turn their attention to Florida? Increased funding in the state could impact local races and potentially benefit Democrats. With Trump's sentencing set for July 11th and his team poised to appeal, the political landscape remains uncertain. So what must we do? We need to rally our base and ensure our voices are heard. Get involved in local politics, support your candidates, and make sure to vote. Engage with your community, spread the message, and stay informed. Together, we can make a difference. Stay tuned for more updates from RedHat News. Like, share, and subscribe to RedHat News to stay updated and join us at the Trump Tent. We'll be on the ground bringing you live coverage from the Trump Tent and Trump Wash. Remember, don't just hear the whispers, hear the roar of the truth. RedHat News, where the truth speaks loud.
Okay, now to break down more of what this means for the Trump camp, let's bring in former Donald Trump senior advisor Christian Whitten. Christian, thank you so much for coming on the U.S. Report on this historic day. First of all, I want to get your reaction to the verdict that was handed down in New York.
Well, the verdict's an outrage, I think. You know, it was a crime that was ill-defined. It looked all along as if it were a kangaroo court. The outcome was preordained. The jury was chosen in one of the most liberal jurisdictions in the United States, and it was for charges that the federal government, that the people in charge of elections declined to pursue. So I think it helps the Trump campaign. I spoke to a number of officials who were close to the former president and involved informally with the campaign, and there was a sense of almost excitement that this is actually going to further excite the base and prove to people that the administration, that the powers that be in the U.S., that the judicial system is being politicized because there's desperation to keep Joe Biden in the White House despite a miserable record. So there's disappointment that you have this politicization of the justice system, but the belief that this actually helps the president.
But Christian, you know, you've worked with the former president, and we saw him before looking very defiant, but also very angry, I'd have to say, about what has been handed down here. How do you think that he is personally reacting and feeling about what has happened today?
Yeah, it's usually not a big mystery what President Trump is doing. I mean, he's usually very candid about his beliefs on social media. So very angry and disappointed. I think, you know, there was some thought that at least you'd have a hung jury, that at least some of the jurors would be skeptical. After all, they had to ask for the judge to read his convoluted instructions back again. But I think you'll see a resolve. Also, this is, you know, this is the last trial that will play out before the election. So who knows what this judge, who's a very politicized judge, will do, whether he'll try and keep Trump in New York as sentencing matters are addressed, or whether this now just gets turned over broadly to the public. But you know, I think you'll see a very, very determined president. The question is, too, is whether he decides to be magnanimous to his former home state of New York or whether he chooses to be vengeful once in office. It's very easy for a president to start pulling back some of the many federal funds that New York City relies on to operate, to stay viable.
Yeah, and you mentioned, though, the political nature of this trial, and this stood out to me, and I want to get your reaction, because an awful lot of people are saying, and Alvin Bragg, the DA, has said, this isn't about politics, this is just about following the law, and yet they've set sentencing for July 11th, just a few days before Trump is to be confirmed officially as the Republican nominee at the Republican National Convention. Does that data point to you kind of give away the game that this is really about, well, what they're accusing Trump of, election interference?
Exactly. It is election interference. This seems like an expedited basis. Usually there's a significant amount of time between, especially on a novel case like this, without precedent. You think there would be a significant amount of time between conviction and sentencing. This is what the Biden administration is counting on. They're hoping against hope that this is going to have some sort of effect that Biden has been unable to achieve. He's below water in all of the polls, the economy, foreign policy, the direction of the country. People still blame him for inflation. They blame him for a lower quality of life. And yeah, it looks just like it's ongoing politics by this judge and by the other judges in cases against Trump.
But also, finally, Russia, all the rest of it, finally they've got their thing to say, 2016 doesn't count. It was a cheat. He didn't really earn the presidency. People didn't really vote for him. They were cheated out of information. Therefore, the system maintains its perfect record of picking within its own. And I've got to say, again, even as somebody who, after 2020, we were having those conversations, remember sort of going, well, okay, maybe it's time to move on. Will they move on? Who knows? Look at the polls, look at this, look at that. But the thing that just sends me really crazy is that the Democrats literally think that their prosecution of Donald Trump or their attitude towards Donald Trump makes them better people. It proves that they're better people. And anyone who gives Trump either the benefit of the doubt or is an outright supporter, there's something wrong with them too. Well,
I mean, look, you saw that even in my interview with Bill Maher, right, where he said we can demonize Trump, which he likes to do, but not his supporters. But as soon as I said I was voting for Trump, something switched, right? Like I got moved into a category of like enemy for a while there. And we landed it in the end. But that is how strong the hatred for Trump is. And, I was watching MSNBC and their coverage today, and they were talking about how they've never seen someone behave like this toward a judge and his gag order earlier in the case, unless that person's mentally unbalanced. It would have to be somebody from an institution. And I thought the reason all these unprecedented things are happening in this trial is because the trial itself is so unprecedented that Trump has to speak out about it because he's running for president. And you've used the legal system to try to stop him from winning. So he must fight this legal battle on legal grounds, while at the same time speaking about it to the public so that they understand how to categorize what's happening to him, how to think about what's happening to him. That's why things feel so extraordinary. But he's not the one who started the extraordinariness. You guys are. You're the ones who shoved the Obamacare down our throats. You're the ones who crossed the legal Rubicon before anything happened with Trump. You guys are the ones who have changed the way we're doing business. And you're the ones who changed the filibuster. You got rid of it for lower federal judges. And then the Republicans got control and got rid of it for the Supreme Court judges. Every once in a while, the other party will regain power and you will be made to suffer. And that's the only solution here. The Democrats must be made to suffer in the same way. We need to start indicting them.
And look, I was just thinking about examples of things that are the low-hanging fruit, right? If this is what everyone's going to go after. What about all of those members of Congress that with their stock portfolios? What about, frankly, Nancy Pelosi, her personal wealth? Geez, I wonder where all of this inside information keeps coming from. All right, go after that. The only problem, of course, is that many of the jurisdictions which are the heart of power, Los Angeles, New York, and Washington, D.C., because they're so blue, they own those systems. So do you have faith that someone from Texas will be able to go after somebody from Washington?
Yes, I do. But they just haven't, because we haven't done that in America. Right. We haven't done that. But we're about to. The Democrats just created a new rule. We get to do that. That's something we now do. It's disgusting. I hate it. But the only way to stop it is to do it to them in return. You don't think that if Barack Obama wanted to, he could have found a reason to go after George Bush for the torture, all the torture of the, down at Gitmo during the war on terror? You don't think that we could have gone after Barack Obama? Trump could have gone after Barack Obama for the drone strikes? That Trump could have gone after Hillary Clinton, lock her up for the emails? We haven't done that to one another. Democrats and Republicans alike have said, that's not us. It was Joe Biden who changed that. And I pray to God Trump wins, and the first thing he does is tell his Justice Department to go indict Joe Biden, who we already know from the special counsel Robert Hur, H-U-R, has committed a felony. And the only reason he wasn't indicted for his felony, which is keeping classified documents that weren't his, was because he said he's a well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory, and I couldn't get a jury to convict. Well, let's roll the dice. Maybe we'll get lucky. Maybe we'll try it in front of a Texas jury or a Mississippi jury. Or maybe we'll go back to that same jury that's trying the Trump classified documents case, so they have a tit for tat. If they decide to acquit one, they're going to have to acquit the other. But that's the first item of business if Trump wins.
And rightly so. Again, they broke it. They're going to have to pay for it. Now, just two quick ones before I let you go. Immediately, everyone says, what does it mean for the election? Look, who knows, right? But obviously, the polling data to this point says anywhere between 6 and 16% of mostly independents would not vote for a person who has been found guilty. We're at that moment now. We've got to wait a couple of weeks to see where polls go, but what's your instinctive feeling about what this moment is for the people who maybe were leaning Trump, but do they lean further in Trump because of the unfairness, or they step away because we couldn't possibly back in a convicted felon?
I'm worried. I know the thing to say right now is, no, everyone's going to rally around Trump. And that's true for Republicans. But we're talking about independents, and they're already on the fence about him. They don't love him. And they probably voted for Joe Biden, some of these, in 2020. But they're warming up to Trump. The economy sucks, inflation, they're paying through the nose for groceries and everything else. They're warming up to Trump. But you know what's going to happen here, Paul. This thing is going to be on loop between now and Election Day. It's all Joe Biden has. Think about it. Nothing's worked. He's hemorrhaging in the polls, the swing states. This is what he has. Convicted felon Donald Trump, convicted felon Donald Trump. And if you ask the average person, they haven't been paying that close attention to this trial. So I think most will not be persuaded to change their vote one way or the other. But this election is going to come down to like a handful. And I'm worried it actually could change their opinion. And so we are going to have to wait and see. I'd still put money on Trump winning this thing, but I don't think this is going to help with those fence sitters who he does need in order to win.
Exactly. Well, we'll see a press conference tomorrow at the very same place where he came down the Golden Escalator for the first time back in 2015. He's doing it at the atrium of Trump Tower. So we'll see the beginnings of the political fight back. We'll see. Last one here is the process question about whether he's going to go to jail. I think this judge, if he can find any way to do it, will do it. Isn't it amazing and how convenient that the sentencing process begins 4 days before the Republican convention? So you reckon he'll slot him?
I don't think he's going to recommend or send him to jail. I don't. I think the prosecution is going to recommend it. They're going to argue for it. Wow. It's potentially up to 4 years, but somebody with no record would never get that. They wouldn't get jail time. I don't think they'd get jail time. I've had some lawyers say they would, but no, I don't think Trump's going to get jail time. But think about, what if he does? What if he sentences him to 30 days and then probation? And he has to show up at the Republican National Convention, where you're supposed to be celebrating with your family and your friends and your, biggest surrogates, and telling the country what you can do for them, how you're going to help change their lives. People are really suffering. And this is their chance to see, like, okay, here's the one guy. I'll take a look at him, and then next month I'll take a look at the other guy, and I'll make a decision on what's best for my family and my country. And instead, what they want is to have him in an ankle bracelet behind bars. They want him locked up. Who are these people? I don't recognize them as fellow Americans. I don't understand how they're built at all. It's completely unfair to Trump, and yet 4 days before he's supposed to be getting ready for that convention, he will be hearing what his sentence is, and 1 week from the day that sentence is imposed, he's supposed to accept the Republican nomination for president. It's a dark day in America, Paul.
It's disgusting. Thank you for talking to us on this crappy day. We'll talk again in our regular spot next week. Thank you, mate.